Hi everyone, it's Jerry. On June 30th, 2021, Abhimanyu Mishra broke Sergey Karjakin's record for youngest chess grandmaster ever. Karjakin earned the grandmaster title at the age of 12 years, 7 months, 0 days, and that record stood for 19 years until now. Mishra is now the youngest chess grandmaster ever at the age of 12 years, 4 months, and 25 days. So pick your favorite superlative. It's a remarkable feat, to say the least. And I cannot help but wonder if this may have been achieved much sooner, with the pandemic and all having its effects. Chess tournaments were, of course, one of the many things influenced because of the pandemic. They were put to a halt until recently. So this kid from New Jersey, by the way, is running out of records to break. I'll share a few of his other achievements throughout this video. Something I'd like to share first before we have a look at the game that got him to this prestigious Grandmaster title. This list here is the top 10 youngest chess grandmasters ever. Mishra at the top now. A couple things I found interesting. One is 6 of these 10 got on that list within the past 5 years. And have a look at the number 8 spot. Who holds that? One Magnus Carlsen from Norway, you know, the current world chess champion. Yeah. Mishra beat out Carlsen to the Grandmaster title by over a year. The sky may just be the limit for this one. Okay, as mentioned, let's have a look at a game he played. He's playing with the black pieces here. His opponent on the white end, Grandmaster Leon Luke Mendonca. This was a game played at a tournament in Hungary, a round 9 game. This is a 10-round tournament. That's significant. That means Mishra earned that final prerequisite for the Grandmaster title with a round to spare. Those of you who may not be familiar with how you achieve a Grandmaster title, the basic rundown is you need to achieve 3 Grandmaster norms. A Grandmaster norm is achieved when you perform at a 2600 or better performance rating at a tournament. You have to do that on 3 different occasions. And you also have to achieve a rating at some point. Your rating has to hit 2500 or more. All of that has been met, and we have a new youngest chess grandmaster ever. Okay. On board here, what do we have? It's a Grunfeld defense. And if you're going to play the Grunfeld, you better be excited about having this c-pawn go to c5. We need to somehow coordinate with the fianchettoed bishop. We would like to have the bishop's eyes opened up, extend the scope, try and make that d4 pawn budge, flinch, so you could see 3 additional squares. We also have a path for the queen to have some dark square influence. All right. White bites on c5. Bishop to e6. In general, not a good idea to put your minor pieces in front of your center pawns to obstruct these guys, but this move is certainly, it has its points. It's trying to resolve the tension in the center. Black would love if white captures on d5 here. This would be a serious mistake already for white to take on d5. Why is that? I'm just going to put one move on board and then just say some words. This knight and bishop have been improved in just one swing. Not a good idea. You'll note for many moves, neither side releases the tension. If you can control the knight on f6, playing as white here, if you can control that knight on f6, you are, in a sense, doing what? You're also controlling that bishop. Okay, don't let this knight move so easily. All right, what do we have? Knight f3, knight c6, all four knights having an influence on the four center squares. Bishop e2, queen a5, and now knight g5. These knights, by the way, a term that I like to use to describe them, a term that I'll use here is counterparts. This knight, the knight on f3's counterpart is the knight on c6. And I think this because they're both competing for these same center squares. And similarly, the knight on c3 and f6 are counterparts. They're both controlling these two light squares in the center. Why am I drawing some attention to this? Well, have a look at these next two moves. Knight on g5, putting pressure on this bishop. This next move by black caught my attention. It's probably the first move that caught my attention when I skimmed through this game. Black now plays knight to d8. Super unusual, but considered one of the very best moves. These knights are once more counterparts. A knight from g5, knight on d8. They're both now, competing for these two squares here. Black's, of course, ready to recapture on e6. And then be putting pressure on the dark square bishop. White would like to avoid a knight recapture with a punch against the bishop, so in anticipation of that, white takes a step back, puts the bishop on g3, and only at this point does black go ahead and release the tension in the center, capturing on c4 at this stage. White takes the bishop, has picked up the bishop pair, queen a4, offering a queen exchange. It's declined. Queen takes c5. Something I found interesting when preparing for this video is that black can actually exchange queens. This one caught me off guard. I thought to myself, if you're exchanging queens like this, aren't you going to be down a pawn soon? Isn't white going to A, pick up this pawn and have this c5 pawn secure? And I wasn't really seeing a way for black to generate some activity. Where's the justification for black for being down a pawn? I'd like to just share where the compensation is. First, it's knight to e4. Take the dark square bishop. And the follow-up move, pop quiz. What's the move here for black? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, here we go. b5. That's a fork. White can take that pawn out with en passant, but in the process, what's happening? Lines are opening up for the better developed side. The bishop is seeing clearly. White, or the knight has some pressure. This is still a threat. b5 may hit yet again. So there's problems here. Black is going to get the pawn back, basically, is what this is coming down to. Okay. Interesting variation. Black can go ahead and take on a4 there. In the game, it's queen takes c5. We have a queen exchange. This next move was kind of weird for me to see. It was king to e2, allowing knight takes bishop. Having these double isolated pawns, they don't really make a great impression here. I must admit, the knee-jerk reaction for me is to back off and say, have your knight under control. You're not going to damage my queenside pawn so easily. How might black follow if we have bishop to c2? Once more, we can have this idea of the king-knight hunting the dark square bishop and the bishop being unmasked. Right now, black's ready to take the knight and damage the queenside pawns. So this is a way forward for black, just putting on one move. If we have bishop to c2, we could have the bishop backing off and being in a position like this to recapture. But okay, in the game it's simply king to e2 with some reasoning, maybe going like this, saying, yeah, okay, I have double isolated pawns, but you know what? We're in an ending. My king is on a light square. and a little bit closer towards the center. My king will maybe have a little bit better an influence in this ending. All right. Get the rooks on open files. They don't last long. All rooks exchanged. Endgame on board, which is even. No great advantage for either side. The kings need to contribute, so both of these moves are super sensible. Pawn contributing. There's a path now for the black king. Some pressure on a7. Of course, that's spotted. No problem there. b5. White has doubled pawns. Can we exchange one? Black says, no, not so fast. Let's hang on. Let's keep you with double isolated pawns still. Knight c5. Bishop c7. a4. And what do we have here? This next move, it's a big decision. Normally, you wouldn't want to do this, right? The bishop is generally going to be the better minor piece. The shiftier piece, the long-range piece, pawn still on both wings of the board, both sides of the board still relevant. But there is this decision made to give up the bishop for the knight. Why? Well, you knock out a defender of d5, and black's now able to improve the king further. So, better king position for black. And this pawn is maybe, now that the king isn't on e6 anymore, the e pawn is ready to roll. All right. Trying to provide some reason behind these moves here. e5. Knight b3. It's still considered around an even position here. Not winning for either side. This is considered better is to take with the king and put some immediate pressure on the e-pawn. But we have the capture with the pawn, maintaining the king on the 5th rank. King b4, knight d2. This is where it starts to actually go a bit astray for Team Black. And white, in just a little bit, is actually winning. But as we'll soon see, things turn. A mistake is made. Okay, h5, king takes a. It's not the worst pawn to end up losing, right? These two pawns on their own still can't create a passer. That one pawn watches over the two isolated pawns. But the white king could go hunting, and he's going to eye up that b pawn. We have a little back and forth here. This next point right here, I think, may be instructional for many of you. This was for me, this was a reminder, at least this ending here was a reminder to, actually, I don't want to share just yet. Let me throw a pop quiz your way. White to move. What move would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay. This was a reminder for me to be patient. A position type like this. The move played was king takes b7. And then king takes b5 was played. You'll notice king takes b5 can only be played once white makes this decision. White is in control. White gets to control when black takes the pawn on b5. White should be a bit more patient in this position and do something else. What is that something else? When I ran that pop quiz, if you thought to yourself, well, maybe I'll put my pawn on h4 and say, aha, I'm clamping down on these two pawns. That gets a thumbs up. That's a good move. And another one is, there may be others, but another one, I'll just point out two. Another one is bishop to g5. Now, why am I pointing out h4 and bishop to g5? Well, again, white should be patient here. There's no rush. And the bishop on g5, I pointed out with what h4 is doing. h4 is locking down on these two. What is bishop g5 doing? It's watching over the pawn on e3, which is at some point going to be attacked. And it would be nice if the bishop was already in a position, was already optimized, where it's performing this defensive role, so that one day the bishop doesn't immediately have to react to a threat on e3. White can do both white can improve the bishop, white can improve his king side in general, improve his king side structure. A setup that would be really nice would be to play h4. There really isn't a whole lot black can be doing besides just waiting, going back and forth. In this specific case, if you try to move forward in any way with this knight, let's say defending the b7 pawn, you're toast. That hurts. A pin and win of the knight. That hurts as well. Skewer town. Okay. You could play h4. Let's just say we have a back and forth with the king. You could play bishop g5. You can go one step further, pawn on g3, and even one step further. I like this construction right here is what I'm getting at, where everything is defended. And only then pick off that b7 pawn. And then go hunting for all the kingside pawns. And let's not forget, this is still an extra that black has to tend to. Okay, I guess the short story here is for white to be a bit more patient and do some optimization of the bishop and kingside pawns. Okay, king takes b7 on this move 44 straight away. King takes b. This is still better, even winning for white in this position. After knight to d2, we have king to e5. This is a critical moment in the game. The best move for white is to say, hey, I have this passed pawn. Let's go. b4 would be the way to victory here. I'll put on a couple moves. Knight c4, king e6, knight takes e. We don't take here because what's going to happen? Both sides end up queening. Okay. But we push the pawn. And we're going to be the winning side here. I think the variation goes something like this, where we get into a spot where white's going to soon have two passers that the knight and king cannot deal with. White's going to go on to win from this position. All right. b4 was not played. King e5 was played. Yeah, this is allowing a cool move for sure. Black to move. The young Mishra, what did he come up with here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, here we go. The move played, knight f3. Very sneaky. We're landing a fork here. The knight on f3 is poison. Should not be captured, but it was captured. And white's going to be toast. What's considered better is to, not there, king to f6. Simply watch over the bishop. This line may come about where we end up having both sides queening here. Something like this. This is just a quick way to show how it could maybe be stripped to king versus king. If we go into the king and pawn ending right there. Straight to kings it may go. After king to f6, a draw resulting, but in this position we have the knight being captured. Black recapturing now, runaway pawn. That's a passer. There's only one way to stop it, temporarily. Bishop h4. Who's this? That's a defender. What do we try to do to defenders? Deflect them. So g5. Scare the bishop off this diagonal. Bishop takes pawn and the pawn bolts. So can't do that. Bishop f2 is played. What if you go to g3? You're going to eventually scare the bishop into a position where the king can approach with an attack against the bishop, one way or the other. So white is not interested in inviting h4 with tempo. Instead, bishop f2, king e2, and white bolts with the pawn, and this is going to lose. As we will soon see. Is there some other try here? Not really. Let's say if the bishop went here, the king can play to f1. And let's say the king goes here, preparing to meet king takes bishop with king takes pawn. That isn't going to work either. After this move, black would first play g4. And if you're approaching like this, well, we could take the bishop and then be in time to push through. Are there any other fancy variations to consider here? Not really. Yeah, the black pawns are simply too fast. So, I don't know, maybe something like this here. Yeah, we have these two moves. The f-pawn, too fast. How did this game finish? We didn't have the bishop moving at this point, but instead the b-pawn running. But black will end up queening first, and something special happens at the end. Black will, well, something to note here. Quick tip in these pawn race situations. Oh, who's going to queen first? Look at that in those race positions when figuring out who's going to queen first. Look at the promotion squares and draw a few lines. Think to yourself, you know, draw a file along a file, a rank, and a diagonal, and make sure your king isn't on any of those lines. There could be problems. There is a king on one of those lines, and it is a problem. Notice this king, by the way, isn't just going anywhere. You might as well take a pawn, right? And that pawn is controlling f4. We're going to see the significance of not having control over f4 in this case. This game goes no further. White resigns at this stage. Why? If you promote, there's this trick of a skewer, and the queen will be lost. And the game is over. It goes no further. White resigns in this position, and that is, this game right here is the one that went ahead and put the young Mishra over the top. Got him to that prestigious Grandmaster title. Really, again, a remarkable, remarkable feat. So feel free to share what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you have any kind words to share with the young Mishra, feel free to go ahead and share them in the comments below. Maybe he'll see them at some point. I love to see achievements like this in chess. And we'll see who can maybe at some point go ahead and break that record. He has certainly made that task much more difficult for those looking forward to earning that title at the youngest age ever, or becoming the youngest chess grandmaster ever. So we'll see how things shape up. Again, feel free to leave any comments. That's all for now. Take care.